To get started with the UiPath Attended Framework, click More Templates at the UiPath Studio front page. In Search for Templates, search for Attended, and then you'll pick the Attended Framework. Use Template. We can give it a name. I will call mine Knee Pictures, and then I'll click Create. Then click Open Main Workflow. This is the UiPath Attended Framework. As you might see, this is a simplified version of the UiPath Robotic Enterprise Framework, but this is designed for attended linear processes. This message up here, that is just because it's built on the Windows legacy compatibility, but when you watch this video, the attended framework will be updated and you will not get this message. If we scroll a little bit up, we can see that the process run in parallel. That means that the main process run at the same times as a show status window. This is a little nice helping window. We'll see that when we build this automation today. Now let's look at the main process. So we will start at the initialization config. Here we will create a config file like we do in the REFramework. But here it's done much easier. We can either have a system exception, that means that something is wrong, or we can have a success and go to the user input form and process. In the user input form and process, the user is presented with an input form. Based on that input, different processes can be run. Here we can go to the result form if we are having a success, or a business exception, or a system exception. The user can also click cancel, and that will go to the end as well. So if we go to the result form, that means that we either had an exception or a success. The user will get displayed with the results, and then we'll go to the end. We will actually have something to run. You can just run the project, and then you'll see that we'll have an input form. Nothing will really happen because we haven't defined that. But here we have the view user guide. We can have the output folder, and this is the default value. So if you run this automation before, this one will get showed in it. And if I just move this one over here, you can see that we are having this little status helper. I moved it to the right so you can imagine that this is the parallel process. Here we have the main, and this is the status window. When I click continue here, you'll see that the process is complete. We didn't have any process. I can choose to repeat the process or close it. I will just close it. That's it. In today's UiPath Attended Framework use case, we are helping an X-ray department that wants to send their pictures to the correct hospital. And let me just show you what kind of pictures it is. And it could be literally any kind of file, but it's pictures of knees. And let me close it and go back to Studio. The UiPath Attended Framework is next to none when it comes to creating robots that works alongside humans. The first thing we'll configure is actually not the config, but the input form. Then we'll take the config afterwards. So go to Project, and then the Display Input Form, double click that will open it. Here you click the Open Form Designer, and now we can design it. This is the default one. I'll click Maximize. Let's change it a bit. First, we'll add a header. So up here, I'll add a header. The label size, let us pick header high, and then we can pick a text. I'll just say knee pictures upload form, and then I'll click save. So this is our header. Then the view user guide, that is fine. That is a little guide to the user that we can create as a web page. We will not have this select output folder, so I'll delete that. But what we will have is some input fields where the user can put in data. The first one, that is the social security number, and that is the unique identifier of the QN patient with the picture files. What I will do here is that I'll go to validation, and here I'll say this is a required field. I'll also say that this needs to follow a regular expression. That means that this social security number must follow a pattern. I'll just choose a very simple one for this. That will be 6 digits. Then I'll have this one here, and then I'll have 4 digits. So this will be how I validate my social security number based on this little regex pattern. I can go up to the field key, and here you can see that this field key is called social security number. This means that when the users start filling in these forms, we can save this social security number given by the user in this field key, and we will use it in dictionary. Let me show you in 2 minutes. I'll just click save here. I also want to let the user add in a comment in this form, so I'll add another text field. Here I'll just say comment. Let's make this not mandatory, so in validation I'll not click required. I'll inspect the field key, and here I can see it's called comment. That is fine. I'll click save. You can see that there's a red asterisk after a required field, and there's nothing here. Then I want a drop down list of the different apartments. So here I'll say department, and what I will do is to go to data. Here in the label, I'll add in my departments. I'll only have 2 to make it a little bit more easier to ourselves. I'll say Viborg and Aarhus. That's it. In the validation, this will be required as well. The field key is called department. I'll click save. Now we can start to upload the pictures. Let us have 2 different knee pictures that will be frontal and right. In a real life case, you might want to have like 10. So what I will do here is that I'll go to layout, and I'll say table and drag it in here. Number of rows 1, 2 columns. I'll click save. Then we can start to have these 2 upload things. So that is a file folder path. I'll drag it in here. The first one is called knee frontal. And here, let's say that this is required too. The field key is named knee frontal. I'll click save. I'll also have a knee right, and it's created similarly. This will not be mandatory, however. We only need 1 picture, but the other ones will be optional. Then I'll have a field key called knee right. I'll click save. Down here we have some buttons where when these are pressed, the form will close and some actions will be performed. These ones will be stored in something called a selected button. I'll show you what that means in also a little 2 minutes or something. So what I will do here is that I'll move the cancel over here. Then let me delete the continue, and we'll add 2 new buttons ourselves. So this one here, the second last, we'll call that submit actually. And this is of the type submit. That means that when this is clicked, this field key will be stored in the selected button, and we can move accordingly because we will have 2 different buttons, and our process will take 2 different paths, whether or not this is clicked or the other one is clicked. So if I go to field key, I can see that this field key is called submit. Then I'll click save. I'll also make an urgent. So I'll say urgent like this. You can see that this is also of the type submit. Don't let that confuse you. The field key will be urgent. That is fine. I'll click save. I'm satisfied with my form. I can even preview it by clicking here. And let me just do this. That is fine. We can upload some information, the pictures, and we can click submit. Or if it's urgent, we can do here. That will get us prioritized in some way. I'll click exit preview. I'll click save. And now my input form is done. So what I want to show you here is that if I click this create form, I can go over to properties in collections. And here you can see we have this container that is the object here. And this will store whatever gets typed in the create form. And what we will do here is that we'll deserialize it since it's a JSON. And then we'll say for each pair that we have here, then we will put it into our IO dict, that means in and out, dictionary config, and we will have this key value pair as the same from here in the object container. We'll also see that we have this selected button, and this will get stored in str selected button. and be put into our io.config as the selected button. Then we can go down here, and here we can see that immediately if this is called cancel, then we'll close the form and move to the end actually, or we can view the user guide. That will be to navigate to a URL. So what I will do here, let me just save it. We can run the new form. I can either go to main or I can actually run it from here if I just clicked run. But now I'll just run the main. That will run all the invoked workflows. Here we have our input form. And let me just cancel this. We will not need it. I mean, there's no processes behind at the moment. If you want to update the error and success forms shown to the user, you should go to Framework Flows, and here you can see the display result form error and the display result form success are here. You can just modify them. We will just go with the default ones for this project. Now we will go to the form button actions. So I'll double click that one. Here you can see that we're evaluating on the selected button again. Now we know it's not cancel or user guide. Then we can start to move. We don't have a continue. Remember, we called them submit and we called it urgent. So these are our two possibilities here. You can see that we are running a workflow called process, and this is invoked. You'll find it up here in the continue workflows. Here it's called process, and this is the same as here. So what we can do here, we can just right click, rename, and here I can say submit pictures. That will describe it a little better. Best practice always to rename your workflows so it matches the content. We also want to create an urgent, and that should be up here in the continue workflows as well. So what you can do for now to make sure that we have all the required things in, that will be the broadcast messages to the little status here. I'll show you in 2 seconds. That will be to right click, copy, right click, paste. Then we'll right click, rename, and instead of submit pictures copy, I'll just call this submit pictures urgent, and I'll click OK. Now I can go down to my urgent in the switch, and then I can drag this one in here. You'll see that this turns orange, and you might know this from other invoked workflows or the REFramework. You'll need to press the import arguments and give this a value that is to map it. So go over here, press Control Space, and luckily it's named io.config. This is an in-out config. I can just pick this one here, click OK. Now we define what will happen when the user clicks submit an urgent, but these ones are still kind of empty. I can try to open up the submit pictures. Here you can see we have a log message, and here we have a broadcast message. This will broadcast to the status window. It will say process running, and here we can actually say process running and maybe submitting pictures. It will go quite fast because our process will just be to update and to upload to an Orchestrator queue. But imagine you have to wait a bit. This will actually get shown in the status window like this. So now I can just save this, and the form button action I can also save. Now, and let me just close the display input form. Now we will do the config. So double click the config utility, and don't, I repeat, don't click the open form designer, because what this is actually, it's meant to help you creating the config very easily. So click the drop down, click run file. This will run a form where you can create your own config. You can probably recognize some of them, that's settings, constants, and assets. I will start with the form defaults. If I don't add any default, this will get the value of the previous run. So I'll add another here, and then I'll start to add my social security number. And these ones, those ones are the field keys from the input form. So make sure you spell them right. Maybe you can copy paste them. I'll just give it a blank value. That means that they will get reset after each run. So I'll click save, and I'll have another one that will be comment. Then I'll add the department. I'll add all 5, was it? Department, and then I'll have the knee frontal. And here it's knee right, and I'll click save. So these ones will all be blanks whenever I rerun my form. That is fine. Let's also create an exception. An exception will occur, for example, if we have a business rule exception. That could be something wrong with the data. So we will have a business rule exception that says that our social security number is blacklisted. I'll call this blacklisted SSN, and this will also go into our config file. So everything is there. We can call them with their keys and get their value backs. So here we have the blacklisted SSN, and we can give the error message. The SSN is blacklisted. We can click save here as well. In the settings, we will change the business process name. We'll give that a value that could be knee pictures, like this. Then we'll click save. The user guide, you saw the link at least, or you saw the button. We can, right now, I haven't created a user guide for this process. So I'll just direct to my homepage, which you can say will not be sufficient for the actual solution. For now, it's fine. So here you'll put in your user guide. The automation description, and this will get shown in the form here. I'll just say radio largest knee picture upload. And I'll click save. If an error occurs, then I will provide my own email here. So I will get the error messages. Jensen.org, or the user can choose to send an email to me with the error that this gives. The Orchestrator queue folder and the queue name for that matter, we will go into the automation cloud and then we'll go to Orchestrator. So this is my folder name, and I'll be creating a queue called knee. So, and I'll just give it the name knee and make it default. So I'll click add. So now I have what I'm going to use. I go back here. The Orchestrator queue name, I'll call this one not process ABC queue. I'll call this orthopedic, or this was actually the folder, sorry. So this is knee. You'll see I also make errors when I code. That is perfectly fine. And the Orchestrator queue folder, that will be the orthopedic, like this. Then we'll click save. So this is how it works. So this will be the Orchestrator queue folder, and this will be the queue name. I can move up again. Here I'll see the constants. So this will be the form title for the user inputs and result form. I'll give it the value not UiPath, but something like knee pictures, and I'll click save. If I wanted to create an asset in Orchestrator that could be a password of some sort, then I would create it here. We will not do it in this process, so I just click save and come back to UiPath Studio. Then we can close the config utility. We now have a configuration. What I want to do now is to fix the process. That means that we'll do the error handling, and we'll also do the actual process, at least when the user wants to submit the pictures. We will submit that to an Orchestrator queue. So first we will in the continue workflow, and here if you want, you can just make it a little bit nicer to look at. So you want to go into continue workflows, and then you want to double click the submit pictures, and you can actually close down the form button action here. So that's it. Here you can see we modified it a bit. We said that this was submitting pictures. So right before this broadcast, and here down here we will have the actual process. Then we will just before here we will have the error handling. I'll just do a simple if, and then I'll have a throw in it. So if I say if, and I'll drag this if in here. Here I'll ask if the social security number is on the blacklist, and this blacklist will just be a hard-coded number, but this could actually be a database, an Excel book, or whatever you can think of. So what I will do here is that I'll find the social security number in our config, and this looks like this. I'll do this, and then I'll say social security number, and then I'll say to string, if that is equal to, and let us just pick like a really simple path like this, then we want to throw a business rule exception. So I'll find a throw, drag in this throw down here. I could give it a message. So up here in the exception, I will now define what will going to happen. And I can press Control Space to activate the intelligence. I'll say new. And then, just as you know, we'll throw a business rule exception with a string in here. Usually you will type something in like blah blah. But right now we will use the error message that we created in the dictionary. So again, Control Space io.config. Then parentheses and then quotation marks. We called it blacklisted SSN. And since this is also an object, we'll need to say to string, and we can click OK. So now we have the error handling, and I can click Save here. We can try to run it. Now if I just debug it now, this will open up the form and we will type in the blacklisted social security number. I really hope that this is the right one. And here I'll just say blah, the department, that will be Vibor, and then I'll upload a picture, at least one at least. Then I'll click Submit. Now you'll see that we throw this message. The social security number is blacklisted. So our error handling works. I can choose to log this later on, but for now we will say that this is sufficient for the error handling. Because we also want to say, if this is not true, then we will continue. Because this throw will get caught by the outer try catch. And if it's not on a blacklist, then we want to process the actual process. That will be process, blood, whatever. So we will put that in here. And this one will just be, we'll just add a queue item to our Orchestrator queue. So here I'll say add queue item. We will fill in the folder path, and let me just do this. Let us start here. And this will be the Orchestrator queue folder. So again, I have that in my config. I can just do this, provide the key, and this was something like Orchestrator queue folder. And then I'll say to string. That is the folder. Then we also have the queue name. And since we're going to write this a bit, I'll just copy it down here from the folder path, go up to the queue name, and then I'll just delete this folder and have the name in instead. I'm lazy. We'll also have a reference, and that is a unique identifier, so we can see it in the Orchestrator queue. That one will get, if I go in here, view the transactions, that will go into the reference column. So what you will do here is that you'll go back here in the reference, I'll paste in this as well, and we'll have, instead of the Orchestrator queue folder, of course, we'll have the social security number, and we'll click OK. So now we have the Orchestrator queue information and we have a reference. We can also do what we want to actually add to the queue. You'll do that here in the item information in this collection. And here we will be creating incoming argument. We will have the social security number. And this will be, again, we will just do this. And we will say social security number. Then we will have a comment. Again, copy paste, and here we will have the comment from the dictionary. Then we will have a department like this. Paste it in over here. And if you misspell something here, don't worry, we will find out. We could have done here. I like these sort of live builds, because then we might do some error handling in the development. And here we'll say the knee frontal. And I'll just do this. And finally, we will have the knee right. And by the way, these knee pictures, they will be path to the pictures. So then we need our processing robot to go down and grab these pictures and process them in some way, upload it to a server or another system. So this is the knee right, like this. Now we're done with the attended framework. I'll save it and I will try to run the main and see that I can actually upload to Orchestrator. We saw that the error handling worked. So let's just not do the error this time. I'll provide a social security number. Then I'll say this person lacks energy, some sort of a medical comment. I'll move it to Aarhus. Then I'll provide a picture, the frontal, the right, do this. I'll click submit. Now you can see that my process up here is complete. It says that the automation has finished. And if I go in here to my Orchestrator queue, I'll refresh it. Still said 0, but don't worry. Go to the 3 dots, click view transactions. You will have the transaction here. And if I click these 3 dots, view details, here you'll have it. The social security number, the comment, the department, the knee frontal, that is the path of the picture, and the knee right. So we can stop the process, or we could repeat it if we wanted. One thing that we can fix is the actual header in the form. So we defined it in config utility. That means that we have defined it twice, and let me just show you how that looks. Here you can see I have both knee pictures and knee pictures upload form. So this one is the one from our config. This is the config description. So we'll get rid of this one. This was hard coded in. And let me just close this one here. And close it again. So what we will do is simply just go to the display input form, open up the forms designer. And here you will just remove this header like this. Then we'll save. Now you'll see how we can easily edit these forms even after we are finished. And I like this attended workflow so much. It's so easy to work with. Here you go. We now have a nice looking form. And if I click the view user guide, that will take you to my homepage here. You still need to know more as an advanced UiPath developer. Click this video that will teach you another important UiPath concept.